At Christmas, my mother-in-law stared at my 6-year-old and said children from cheating do not get to call her grandma. She said it right after rejecting the gift that Ellie made with pride. The room froze, like the whole living room forgot how to breathe. I stood there, with my mouth opening and closing, like my mind had been unplugged. Ellie did not understand every word, but she understood the rejection. Her face crumpled, and a dizzy rush hit me hard. I grabbed the back of a chair, not to keep from falling, but to keep my hands off Barbara. A minute earlier, everything looked festive and normal, at least on the surface. The tree blinked, the candles smelled like cinnamon, and ham filled the kitchen air. Presents were stacked high, and everyone acted like we were all lucky. The favoritism was already in motion, and it always follows the same path. Kayla was there with her daughter Piper, and Piper was treated like the star. Ellie sat beside me, holding her small wrapped box, waiting quietly for her turn. My husband Nathan stayed close, eyes sharp, jaw tight, watching every move. Barbara waved Piper forward first, and everyone clapped as Piper opened expensive gifts. Then Ellie stood, careful and hopeful, and walked toward Barbara with her present. Ellie had spent 2 evenings on it, painting a small ornament in winter colors. Barbara took it with 2 fingers, glanced once, and set it down. Then she delivered the sentence again, like she wanted the wound to land. My stomach dropped, because she aimed it at a child to punish me. Nathan shifted beside me, and I felt his anger rise like heat. Before I could speak, my son Mason stood up, straight and calm. He looked at Barbara and said, "If Ellie cannot call you grandma, then I will not call you grandma either." Mason placed his own gift on the table, pushed his chair in, and took Ellie's hand. The silence turned heavy, and nobody tried to laugh it away. I lifted Ellie, held her close, and walked toward the door with my family. The car felt too quiet, even with the heater running. Ellie Grant kept sniffing, then went silent again. Mason Grant sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. Nathan Grant drove with both hands locked on the wheel, jaw clenched, eyes forward. I watched the streetlights pass, and I felt rage turn into focus. Ellie asked why Grandma was mad at her, and the word grandma cracked in her mouth. I told her Barbara Grant was wrong, and Ellie did nothing wrong. Mason said Barbara was mean, and Nathan exhaled like he had been holding smoke. At a red light, Nathan said he was done, and his voice sounded steady for once. He said his mother crossed a line, and he would not let her touch our kids again. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Again and again, Barbara calling, then Kayla Grant calling, then Marjorie relatives calling. I did not answer, because answering has never saved me. When we got home, I set Ellie on the couch, wrapped her in a blanket, and brought her water. She asked if she was not real family, and my heart slammed hard. I told her she was my child, and that is real, and that is enough. Nathan stepped into the kitchen and called Barbara, putting her on speaker. Barbara answered like she expected victory, and she started talking fast. She said she will not be disrespected in her own house. She said she will not pretend. Nathan did not argue. He asked one question. "Did you say that to Ellie?" Barbara admitted it, proud and cold. Kayla grabbed the phone in the background, and she said, "We all know the truth." Nathan's voice dropped lower, and he said, "You will not speak to my children again." Barbara laughed and said he will regret choosing a liar. Nathan said he will regret choosing cruelty. Then he ended the call. He opened his banking app, and he canceled the monthly transfer he has sent for years. He said he has paid her bills, fixed her car, and funded Kayla vacations. He said it ends tonight, because support without respect is just permission. I looked at him, and I realized this was not a fight, it was a boundary. Then my phone lit up again, and I saw a new notification. Kayla had posted something public. By morning, messages were everywhere. Cousins, aunts, old friends. Kayla Grant had written a post about betrayal and loyalty and real blood. She did not use names, but everyone knew who she meant. Comments piled up fast. Laughing emojis, sad faces, people acting brave behind screens. Barbara Grant shared it twice, like repetition makes it true. Nathan Grant stared at the post, then took a slow breath, like he was counting to stay calm. He wrote one response in the family group chat, and he kept it short. He said nobody will discuss our children again, and anyone who attacks them will be blocked. Barbara replied with a long paragraph of excuses, then demanded a paternity test, like humiliation is her hobby. I felt my stomach twist, because this was never about truth. It was about poisoning Ellie Grant, so she grows up doubting her own worth. Mason Grant heard us talking, and he walked into the room, face serious. He asked if Ellie was leaving, and Ellie started crying again. I pulled both kids close, and I told them no, nobody is leaving, and nobody gets to vote on our family. Nathan knelt in front of Ellie, and he said the same thing twice. You are mine, and you are safe. Still, the lie had already entered the air, and air gets into everything. That afternoon, Nathan received a call from Florence Grant, his great-aunt. Florence does not call for small talk, and her voice sounded sharp. She said she saw the posts, and she asked what really happened. Nathan told her the Christmas story, slow and exact, and I heard Florence go silent. Then she said, "Bring the children tomorrow, and bring the gift Ellie made." She said she wants to see faces, not captions, and she wants the truth in the room. After the call, Nathan looked at me and said we will do a paternity test, not for Barbara, but for our kids. He said he will end the lie completely, and then we will move on. I nodded, because peace matters more than pride, especially for children. That night, I booked the appointment, and I kept every screenshot of Kayla post. Florence Grant house smelled like lemon polish and strong coffee. She opened the door herself, standing straight, eyes clear, hair silver and neat. She hugged Mason Grant first, then Ellie Grant, and she did not ask them to perform. Ellie handed her the handmade ornament, and Florence held it carefully, like it was expensive. She looked at the paint, the uneven glitter, the little heart Ellie added. Then she looked at me. Florence asked what Barbara said, and I repeated it word for word, without softening. Florence's face tightened, not shocked, just disgusted. She said, "Barbara has always needed a target, and Kayla has always needed an audience." Nathan sat beside her and admitted he has paid bills for years, because guilt was trained into him. Florence nodded once, and she said guilt is the leash they use. Then she asked about the paternity smear, and Nathan told her we scheduled the test. Florence waved a hand like she was shooing a fly, and she said the test is fine, but it will not fix character. She asked a new question, the one that mattered. She asked where the family money has been going, and why Barbara acts so entitled. Nathan hesitated, then told her about the constant requests, the emergencies, the trips that appeared after each transfer. Florence walked to a drawer, pulled out a file, and set it on the table. She said she controls more than Barbara admits, and she has kept records. She said if Barbara wants to weaponize family, then Florence will use facts. Then Florence picked up the phone and called her attorney, Eric Dalton. She said she needs a meeting, and she needs it soon, because she will not leave children exposed to this. I watched her end the call, calm and certain, and I felt the ground shift. Florence looked at us and said one sentence. Barbara thought she owned the story, but she forgot who owns the paper. Eric Dalton's office was quiet, clean, and expensive in a way that signals control. Florence Grant sat at the table like she owned the building, because in a way, she did. Nathan Grant and I sat across from her, with Mason Grant and Ellie Grant at home with a neighbor, because kids do not belong in rooms where adults rewrite their lives. Eric asked Florence what she wanted, and Florence said she wanted protection, not punishment. She said Barbara Grant and Kayla Grant had been living like they were untouchable, and now they had aimed their cruelty at children. Eric nodded and asked for details, so Nathan described the Christmas moment, the insult, the smear online, and the demand for a test. Eric wrote nothing at first. He listened, Then he asked one question that cut through everything. He asked if Nathan had been sending money. Nathan admitted it. Monthly transfers, emergency checks, and payments for Kayla bills. Florence did not look surprised. She looked annoyed, like she hated predictable patterns. Eric asked if Nathan wanted it to stop, and Nathan said yes, immediately. Florence then opened her own folder and slid documents across the table, trust summaries, account notes, and beneficiary designations. She told Eric she would amend her estate plan, effective now. She would redirect what Barbara expected and place it into a protected trust for the children, Mason, and Ellie. Eric explained the structure in simple words. The money would be held for education and health, with strict rules: no access for Barbara, no access for Kayla, and no ability to pressure Nathan. Florence looked at Nathan and said, "This is not revenge. This is a firewall." Nathan swallowed and nodded, and I felt my chest loosen. Eric asked if we planned to take the test, and Nathan said yes, for our kids' peace. Florence said good, then added, "After the results, you will not speak about it again." Eric drafted a short letter that same day, a notice of no contact regarding the children, and a warning about defamation. Florence signed it like she was signing a grocery receipt. When we left, Nathan squeezed my hand and said he finally felt like he was breathing. The test was simple: cotton swabs, forms, and a waiting period that felt too long. Ellie Grant asked if we were doing it because she was bad, and Nathan Grant told her no. We were doing it because some adults lie. Mason Grant tried to act tough, but he watched every conversation like he was guarding his sister. When the results arrived, Nathan opened the email first, then handed me the screen. It confirmed what we already knew. Ellie was his child. Nathan did not smile. He looked tired, because truth does not erase the harm of the lie. We printed the result, not to celebrate, but to end the smear. Eric Dalton advised us to share it only where it mattered, with Florence Grant, and if needed, with a court. Still, Barbara Grant and Kayla Grant kept posting hints, trying to keep their audience engaged. Nathan sent one message to the family chat, a single sentence: "The test confirms Ellie is mine, and the discussion ends now." Barbara replied with silence for once. Then Kayla exploded, calling the test fake, calling me manipulative, and calling Nathan weak. Florence answered with her own short message: "Stop speaking about children, or you will meet consequences." After that, calls started. Barbara crying, saying she only wanted honesty. Nathan told her honesty would have sounded like an apology, not an accusation. Barbara begged to see the kids, and Nathan said no, because you do not get access after you poison a child. That night, Ellie asked if she could still call Florence Auntie Flo. Florence laughed gently and said yes, always. Ellie smiled, and that smile felt like a small repair. Mason whispered that he still did not want to go back there, and I told him he did not have to. Nathan looked at both kids and promised we would choose people who protect them, not people who perform. Barbara Grant expected the world to soothe her, like it always had. Instead, bills arrived without their usual help. Nathan Grant had canceled every transfer, and he did not restart them when she cried. Kayla Grant called demanding money for rent, and Nathan told her to call her own job, not him. Then Florence Grant moved, quietly and decisively. Eric Dalton filed the updated documents, the trust terms, the beneficiary change, and the restrictions. Florence also requested a full review of any gifts, loans, and money she had provided to Barbara over the years. She wanted a clean ledger, and she wanted it now. Barbara panicked and called relatives, claiming Florence was being controlled by me. Florence heard about it, and she did not argue. She simply sent Barbara a letter through Eric. The letter said Florence's decision was final, and Barbara was not to contact the children. It also said any further public accusations would be treated as defamation, with legal action to follow. When Barbara read it, she rushed to Nathan's house, pounding on the door, demanding a conversation. Nathan did not open it. He spoke through the door, voice steady, and told her to leave. Barbara cried that she was losing everything, and Nathan said she lost it when she attacked Ellie. Kayla showed up later, screaming that Florence money belonged to the family. Nathan told her the family is his children, and she has been treating them like disposable. Kayla called Ellie a mistake, and Nathan's voice turned sharp. He said, "Do not say her name again." That night, we installed a camera, not because we wanted drama, but because people who lose power often escalate. Mason asked if we were safe. I told him yes, and I meant it. The truth was not only in the test, it was in our boundary. And for the first time, the boundary had teeth. Barbara Grant did not accept silence. She tried to buy noise. She called cousins, church friends, old neighbors, anyone who might pressure Nathan Grant into softening. She framed it like heartbreak, like a grandmother being punished for caring. Kayla Grant posted again, a long story about betrayal and family, and how people destroy traditions. She hinted that Florence Grant was being manipulated, and that Nathan was abandoning his mother. The comments filled with sympathy, and it made me sick, because sympathy is cheap when it never visits the child who got harmed. Eric Dalton advised us not to fight online. He said courts trust paper, not captions. Florence said the same. Then she did something sharper. She invited Barbara to her home for one meeting, with Eric present, and only on the condition that children were not mentioned like gossip. Barbara arrived wearing perfume and tears, like both were armor. She started with apologies that were not apologies. She said she did not mean it that way. She said she was upset. She said she was only worried about the family name. Florence stared at her until Barbara's voice faded. Florence asked one direct question. "Why did you say it to a child?" Barbara tried to blame me. Then she blamed Kayla. Then she blamed the holiday stress. Florence raised her hand and stopped it. She said, "Stress does not create cruelty, it reveals it." Eric read the boundary letter again. No contact with the children, no public accusations, no third-party harassment. Barbara complained that Nathan owes her, and Florence said the only debt Nathan has is to his children. Barbara demanded her inheritance, and Florence said there is no inheritance for entitlement. Barbara started crying louder, and she said she will be homeless. Florence told her to downsize, and to stop living like other people pay her rent. The meeting ended without hugs, and without permission. As Barbara walked out, she snapped one last sentence. She said, "Ellie Grant will regret this when she grows up." Florence did not flinch. She said Ellie will remember who protected her, and who tried to break her. After that meeting, Barbara Grant tried the worst shortcut. She tried to reach the children through school. Mason Grant told his teacher that his grandmother might show up, because he has learned to anticipate storms. The school called me, and I updated every pickup list, every emergency contact, every permission form. Nathan Grant wrote a formal notice, signed, stating Barbara and Kayla Grant were not allowed to access our children. Eric Dalton provided language that was clear and strict. Still, Barbara tried. She called the school office and claimed there was a family emergency. The office called me back, because adults there can hear manipulation when they have been trained. I drove to the school and saw Barbara waiting outside the gate, arms crossed, face set. She smiled when she saw me, like she expected me to fold. She said she only wanted to talk to Ellie, and she said it sweetly, like poison with sugar. I told her no, and I kept my voice calm. Barbara said I was turning the kids against her. I told her she did that when she attacked Ellie's identity. Kayla arrived in a hurry, yelling about rights, saying she will call the police. I said call them, then explain why you are standing near a school, trying to contact children who are not yours. The security officer stepped closer, and suddenly, their confidence shook. Barbara started crying again, and she said she misses her grandchildren. I asked her if she ever apologized to Ellie. She did not answer. Mason came out with his backpack, saw them, and froze. Then he stepped in front of Ellie. Small body, big instinct. The teacher guided the kids toward me, and I held both of them, one arm each. I told Barbara and Kayla to leave, or I would file a report. They left because witnesses were watching, and they hate witnesses. In the car, Ellie asked why they keep coming, and Nathan said because they cannot accept no way. Then he told her the word no is still real, even when adults hate it. Florence Grant did not wait for another attack. She met Eric Dalton again, and she finalized everything. The updated plan created a trust for Mason Grant and Ellie Grant, with clear rules, money for education, health, and a stable start in adulthood. Nathan Grant and I were named as co-trustees, and a professional trustee was listed as backup, so no family pressure could crack it. Barbara Grant and Kayla Grant were excluded from control, excluded from access, and excluded from any claim that could be used to bargain. Eric explained that the document was not about revenge, it was about removing temptation. Florence signed, dated, and notarized it the same day. She also set aside an emergency fund for us, because she said children should not suffer because adults behave badly. Nathan tried to refuse out of pride, and Florence told him pride does not feed kids. She said, accept help, then build peace. That evening, Nathan called Barbara one last time, not to argue, to notify. He said Florence changed her plan, and the children are protected, and harassment stops today. Barbara screamed, then cried, then tried to plead. Nathan stayed steady and repeated the boundary: no contact, no posts, no visits, no messages through relatives. Kayla grabbed the phone and accused me of stealing, and Nathan said, "You are the one who tried to steal a child identity." Then he ended the call. After that, the noise started to fade. It did not disappear, but it lost its power, because power needs access. Ellie started sleeping better, and she stopped asking if she was allowed to belong. Mason stopped watching the door every time a car slowed outside. I watched my family breathe again, and I realized Florence did not only change papers, she changed the entire balance of our lives. Once the trust changes became real, Barbara Grant panic turned into anger. She could not threaten with inheritance anymore, and she could not buy compliance with guilt. So she tried to recruit sympathy, telling people Florence Grant was cruel and confused. Florence heard it, and she did not defend herself with speeches. She defended herself with action. She instructed Eric Dalton to send Barbara a final notice. Any further accusations about the children, or about Olivia Grant, would trigger a defamation claim. Barbara then did the predictable thing. She broke the boundary in writing. She posted a new message, suggesting Ellie Grant was still questionable, and implying Nathan Grant was a fool. Eric captured it, archived it, and prepared the next step. Nathan sat at the kitchen table when he saw it, shoulders tense, and he asked me if we should respond. I said no, because responses feed the fire. Instead, we followed the plan: document, report, protect. A week later, Barbara received a formal demand to retract, and a notice that continued defamation would proceed to court. Kayla Grant blamed everyone except herself, and she tried to pressure Florence with a visit. Florence did not open the door. She spoke through the intercom and told Kayla to leave. Kayla shouted that she deserved help, and Florence replied that entitlement is not a need. Then Florence did something that stunned even Nathan. She cut off every remaining family benefit. No more gifts, no more payoffs, no more quiet support. She said people who harm children do not get rewards, even small ones. The results hit fast. Barbara downsized, then blamed it on betrayal. Kayla started selling things online, then blamed it on jealousy. Cousins who once cheered their posts started avoiding them, because public cruelty ages poorly when consequences arrive. Nathan watched the collapse and said he felt guilty. I told him guilt is what they trained into him. But guilt is not the same as responsibility. Responsibility is toward Mason Grant and Ellie Grant. That night, Ellie asked if Grandma was still mad. Nathan said Barbara made choices, and choices have outcomes, and that is how the world should work. The next holiday season arrived quietly, without dread, and that alone felt like a miracle. We did not go to Barbara Grant house, and we did not negotiate. We stayed home, and we built a small Christmas that belonged to us. Mason Grant helped hang lights, and Ellie Grant made another ornament, this one with a bright star, and our last name painted clearly. She asked if it was okay to write our name on it, like she still needed permission to belong. I told her yes, and I watched her shoulders relax. Nathan Grant baked cookies badly, burned the first tray, and laughed instead of cursing. Mason laughed too, and I realized laughter can be a form of healing. Florence Grant visited on Christmas afternoon, carrying simple gifts and a quiet presence. She did not demand photos, and she did not ask the children to perform. She sat with Ellie, asked about school, and listened like Ellie words mattered. That was the difference. Real family does not test you. It protects you. Later, Eric Dalton sent one short update. Everything is finalized. The trust is active, and no one outside our household has control. I read it twice, then closed my laptop and let the quiet fill the room. Barbara and Kayla still existed somewhere, but they no longer shaped our calendar. Mason told Florence he was proud of Ellie, and Florence nodded and said he should be. Ellie is brave. Ellie smiled and said she still likes the word grandma, but only for safe people. Florence laughed softly and said, "Then choose your words carefully, and choose your people the same way." That night, after Florence left, Ellie hugged me and whispered that Christmas felt warm again. I held her and promised that in this home, love will never be a weapon, and belonging will never be a question.